Okay, no, listen. We we would win that war, okay? It is that simple. It's that simple. Because if you think about it, this is not who we will get, but think about Trump and his followers and the fucking idiots that kiss his fucking boots. Think about them. Think about how much they want to go to war. Like, they are ready to shoot everyone that doesn't support Trump. It's so easy to get a mob of people behind you. You just have to figure out a cause and convince them that you're the best candidate to lead. Once they get that in their head, they will follow you. Till death. I mean, look at the American fucking... Look at the American military. We just need enough propaganda. And then we can have a shit ton of people. And then the more places we take over, the more people we get. And we obviously you have to start off recruiting those that are willing. But eventually, and you can justify it, like the war's getting out of hand, the cost, etc. There's ways to justify it, lots of propaganda. And I know this makes me sound like the bad guy. I'm not the bad guy, okay? This is just war. If there's a diplomatic way of doing this, we would go about it that way. But there isn't. Because humans like war, so we will play their fucking games. And to play their games, gotta be a little... You gotta think like they think, right? So the more places you take over, eventually you instate a draft. People, you force people, enough propaganda, they'll buy into it, they'll be like, I'm serving the right cause. And the more places you take over, outside of the more people you're getting, more access to weapons you get. Eventually you take over a country with nuclear weapons. Then you're a threat. Then you have everyone's attention, which isn't always good, which is why you take over the small places. You take over the Middle East, people aren't gonna really pay much attention to it. As long as you don't pose any threat to them. You take over all the main trade locations, right? But don't immediately cut off trade. Just you take it over, play nice with everyone else. And once you have enough, and you control the majority of everything, boom. Cut off their access to oil, cut off their access to natural resources that they can only get from where you are. And while yes, it will get their attention, big time, which is not what you want. You don't want the attention of America or Britain or any of those big countries. You cut off their trades. They can't do shit. Sure, they'll have reserves, but they will eventually run out. And now all you have to do is sit there. Just sit there till they run out. Then what are they gonna do? They're gonna come crawling, begging for you. Now, of course, you gotta crack some eggs to make an omelet, right? There will be casualties. We'll try to minimize civilian casualties, but unfortunately, there will be some. Sorry, sister called. Apparently it's an emergency that isn't actually an emergency, because emergencies are constituted by life-threatened... Like, if someone's life is being threatened, or they are in a life-threatening situation, or they're in trouble of potential legal matters, that's emergency. Wasn't an emergency. Wouldn't tell me what it was, but it was an emergency. Anyways, so you get all the countries with natural resources and trade routes, because you gotta cut off their trade routes, because then they can't trade between themselves, Cut off the trade routes, block access to oil and stuff, and by now you should have accumulated enough countries that you have enough weapons. The issue, of course, being that once you have a lot of land and a lot of countries, you're gonna end up spreading yourself thin, making certain areas vulnerable to attacks. Uh, Obviously, like, fucking vulnerable to attacks. Fuck sakes. Sorry, I'm tired, and trying to think about war strategy is kind of exhausting. Vulnerable to attacks. Also, rebellion. Eventually, some people will rebel, even if you are in the right. People will be like, I don't like what you're doing. So we'll have to instate, martial law in some countries. Fucking, honestly, taking over the entire planet, even if eventually what you do is good, you just sound like the bad guy. Because the only way to control that many people at once is to do some things that aren't pleasant, like in state martial law. You gotta fucking uh, shut down borders to all the countries, especially those closer to the Americas or American territories. Uh, I said Americas, I meant America as in the United States. Sorry, again, tired. I'll send this all as one full voice message, or like screen recording also. Um, but yeah, lots of propaganda. You're gonna have to do lots of propaganda, and not all the money you have, like a lot of the budget can't, while it's gonna have to go to military, obviously, you're gonna have to pour some of that into like culture, art, music, just to keep people happy, because if people aren't happy, you're fucked. But if we can pour money into a robotic or cybernetic program, that would greatly cut down on cost of human lives. We could spin it as like a humanitarian kind of thing. Oh, like, look at us, we're trying to save as many human lives as possible while sending these robot troops in, which we already kind of do that with drones and shit. But yeah, really, like, it's a lot. Like, you gotta jump through so many hoops just to get people on your side. And it's just because you can't have a rebellion. Eventually you will, because eventually you'll be seen as a bad guy. And if you win, you won't be. The issue is winning a war against the rest of the planet. That's the issue. But that's going like full guns a blazing. Obviously, there's a more covert strategy of working your way up through politics into leader of America. Someone can, stage something in some other country resulting in war, so you declare war on that country. All the staged shit, it ends up looking like real bad, so you have to instate martial law, and then you overtake America, and then you go through all the political stuff of getting more countries to basically become America. Like how Hawaii and Alaska joined America, or I guess how all countries joined America that were countries before, like a separate country. But just get more people on our side, slowly take them over. But this is like a long process, lots of bribes. And not as visually pleasing as war. In an imaginary state, obviously war is horrible. But in an imaginary, like, taking over the planet kind of thing, it's more satisfying if it's war based. However, a diplomatic approach would probably be the better option, both because of casualties and it'd probably be easier. You'd be playing the long, long game, and by then, like, I don't know. Either way, a lot of money is going to be poured into propaganda of one form or another. So, you know. I mean, probably the easiest way is to get a shit ton of simps from the internet to buy guns and then fight for you. Like, it's shitty, and I don't know if you want that to be your legacy, that you got a bunch of internet simps to go to war for you. But it'd be effective. Have you seen simps on the internet? They'll give their entire salary to a single person. So I don't think they'd have a problem giving their lives. But, there's options. None of them are good. They all end in some negative stuff and a lot of manipulation. But, you know. Either way, a lot of money is going to be poured into propaganda. Also, I've had a lot of time to think about taking over the world to make it a better place overall, but obviously looking like the bad guy. Because since I was... How old was I? Fuck. How old are you in middle school? Like, fucking 6th grade? How old are you in 6th grade? Because that's how long I've been thinking about this shit. Granted, back then it was an army of dogs, because dogs are loyal. And you can train dogs, and dogs won't betray you like humans will. But they're also, not as intelligent and not as free thinking, so of course humans would, rise up against someone trying to take over the entirety of the planet. But and to preface, I know you said not to, look at Hitler. And of course, if we're taking over the planet, we're not going to have concentration camps, no gas chambers, none of that. We're not trying to wipe out a population. We're just trying to control all 8 billion human beings on the planet. Because they're all dumbasses. But Hitler did know how to get a crowd behind him. Not in a good way, obviously. I'm not saying what he did was good. But if we could find, a good public speaker, or if you could just take some, public speaking classes, all it takes is for you to be good at talking. And, an entire country will fall behind you. Though he was also a political figure before he did that. So again, I think the second option and we're not trying to follow in Hitler's footsteps. Again, we're not trying to wipe out any particular group of people. We're just trying to knock some sense into people's brains, non-violently. But to take a couple cues from history specifically, and I'm sure other people have done this, please, maybe. But I think, the second option of being in politics and then instating martial law would probably be the most effective choice. I'm gonna stop talking because it just sounds like I'm trying to be Hitler and I'm not. But how do you phrase taking over a planet and not sound like the bad guy? Anyways, I know that was long. I'm gonna send the fucking... I'm gonna screen record it and then do a TLDR if you want. I don't know if I can, just because it goes into, war tactics. No, I can. It'll be comedic, but I can. Anyways, love you.